Hi there, I'm Andy Nesling, and I'm going to be talking today about chasing the rainbow and getting to continuous delivery from a standing start. First of all, a little bit about me. So I'm currently a tech team lead at Dyson. I've been working in the field of Internet of Things for about 14 years, and I'm passionate about lean and agile software development now. That wasn't always the case, but actually going on this journey took me there. So the continuous delivery journey that I went on was with an Oxford-based startup, Internet of Things startup. Probably started about three years ago, I guess. And the reason I wanted to give a talk today was that actually, when I started at Dyson, I found that an awful lot of the things that I'd learnt going through from having nothing to actually getting to continuous delivery were very, very relevant when I went into a brand new company. And also, if actually sharing how I got to somewhere reasonable gave somebody the heart to actually embark on the journey themselves, I'd be very, very pleased. So what I'm going to talk through is basically where we started from, where we were, what we learned along the way, how we kept going when there was a massive mountain in front of us, how we kept going, and then where we got to after 18 months. So in terms of where we were starting from, not uncommon for startups. We were coming out of a phase where we'd been doing basically everything that we could to prove the proposition. So we'd done an awful lot of work, hadn't put any tests in place. We were literally just trying to get something out there to find, is there actually a need for the thing that we're building? Initially, after that initial phase, we found actually, yes, we launched it and people liked it, and we found, yeah, there's definitely something here. So from that point, we then started to bring the development in-house, and not all of the development had been done in-house before that point. Our team was split between 3 sites, which is probably uncommon, I would say, for a startup, and that brought its own challenges. Our business logic was tightly coupled to a content management system with a lot of communications happening via the database. And the team was new to building complex systems from scratch. So that's where we were starting. So how bad was it? Well, you certainly wouldn't start from where we were if you had a choice. We were certainly past the point where rebooting would actually make things better for us. So we hadn't got the ability to build a deployable in-house. We had no CI environment. We had no tests to speak of. Restarting our production system was problematic. Technical debt was increasing, and we had a brand new team. So these are all the things that were working against us. Just out of interest, how many people maybe have not been in that situation, but have been in a similar situation before? Cool, thanks. So from this point, really, the only way was up. I mean, we were quite often doing releases late at night to try and minimize the impact that it would have on our users when the system didn't come up properly after doing the upgrade. And one particularly low point, I think, was, I don't know, it was some early hours of the morning when the upgrade still wasn't going well, and actually the only place that we could find to have food was a kebab van down the road. We thought, yeah, we've really got to do something about this. We've really got some pain, and we need to change the way that we're working. So we frequently had problems when releasing. We quite often had to manually patch the production system to get it up after upgrading. And our development environments were different from our production environments. So we were quite often running into problems as we put something into production because our development environments were different. So where we needed to get to as a startup, we needed to be at a place where actually we could be releasing small changes rapidly. We needed releasing to be painless and routine. We needed to be putting small changes out there to find out what's engaging with our customers, what do they need. And we were at a point where we were afraid of releasing. So it was completely working against us. But also, from the business perspective, the business had seen up until the point that we actually put our system live, they'd seen an awful lot of changes happening really, really quickly. The second then it's into production, it's then much harder to make those changes, particularly when you haven't got any tests in place. So there was a requirement from the business that I want to be able to see those changes going in at the frequency we were seeing before launch. So it wasn't going to be easy. And the only way from there really is rolling our sleeves up and trying to make things better. In terms of what was working for us, we had an excellent motivated team who were really passionate about wanting to make things better. And actually one of the other things that was working for us was that the team, it was a small team, and the team was doing the development and the operations. So actually we didn't have to bring different sets of people along with us. We just had one team. We were responsible for everything. Around the time that we were looking to improve things, we also brought in a new tech lead who'd got strong continuous delivery experience. And the other thing that was working for us was he didn't run away when he realised where we were. So I'm very grateful for that. Other things that were working for us, we had a project manager, stroke product owner, who was new to continuous delivery, and that was me at the time. And I think what was working for us was that I didn't actually realise how bad things were. and so I was prepared to start on this journey because I didn't really realise at the time how far we'd got to go to get to somewhere good. But the other thing, and crucially it was working for us, was we actually had the trust from the business. Provided we kept on delivering features that the business needed, we had the trust from the business to actually do what we saw was necessary to improve where we were. And the only way that we could keep that trust, obviously, is by continuing to be able to put out feature changes as we're actually improving where we were. So where do we start? Basically, we started by what's causing us the most friction. What is the thing that's actually holding us back the most? And the first thing that we attacked was we had to be able to build on something solid. With so much that wasn't working, we had to have an embryo of something that we could say, yeah, okay, we can trust that. We know that actually when we've built this thing and we're building it reliably, it's built here and it'll be the same every time we build it. So we hadn't got a CI environment. We were doing builds off developer workstations. So that was the first thing that we attacked, was get to a place where actually we're doing a reliable build. We can actually build what we're deploying and build it in-house. So really, and it's very hard actually to make things better until you can build something in-house. It's very, very hard to start improving on, for example, once you can build in-house, you can start triggering unit tests when you're building. Once you've got the ability to build, you can start then take, okay, I've now got this deployable, I now want to start automating it. But actually, until you can build in-house, it's very hard to make things better. So once we got the ability to build in-house, the next thing we concentrated on was actually getting our deployment automated. And actually, for us, having an automated deployment that was ugly, having lots of bash scripts in there, literally just to be able to get to the point where we could take what we built and actually automatically get it running, was a tremendous step forward for us. And once we'd got to that point, we started to improve things really quite quickly. I mean, when we were having problems where we were doing a deployment into production, we're doing an upgrade in production, and we were running into a problem, and maybe we were doing that maybe once every couple of weeks, maybe once every month. We were finding that pain. Actually, once we started automating the deployment, and we were having that pain every single time that we tried to push a change out, we very quickly started to say, actually, we need to solve this problem now. This is actually really painful for us, and because we're seeing it every day, we are actually going to go and sort it out now. Whereas actually, when we were seeing that every month, then we sort of forgot about that. After a month, we'd sort of forgot about the pain before we then had it again. So once we'd got the ability to actually automate our deployment, we started to things get better really quite quickly. And the other thing we found was that actually having 2 manual steps in your automated deployment is just too many, because literally it feels that you can cope with about one. If there's one additional thing you have to do to get your system deployed, you can cope with that. The second there's 2 or 3, actually I won't do that deployment now. I'll wait until after lunch, and then actually no, I'll wait till the end of the day, and then you don't do it, and actually then 2 weeks have gone past, and you're only finding that problem when you're trying to get that release candidate to go out to production. So what we found was we had to try really, really hard to get those manual steps down. And only then did we find that once we'd got, even though it was really horrible and not really very nice at all, once we got to that point where the deployment was automated, we could then start actually improving that deployment and actually getting rid of some of the things which really weren't nice, but we found that it allowed us to start improving those things much quicker by really being very hard and saying we've got to get to no manual steps to actually automate the deployment. From that point, we're now at the bottom of this mountain, basically. We're trying to climb up this mountain. There's a rainbow at the top. We're hearing about people like Amazon that are releasing multiple times a day, and we're just thinking, crikey, how on earth are they doing that safely? At the moment, yes, we've got our deployment automated, but we're only getting feedback after a month's worth of manual regression testing that we've broken something. So how are these guys doing anything like that? But for us, it was small steps. So looking from this point, though, our deployment was now automated, and we could build it in-house, and we were actually starting to improve things. There were things still ahead of us that weren't great. So feedback on when we'd broken something, that was still taking 4 weeks. It's still scary to put changes into production. Sometimes when we're upgrading production, you'd still got your fingers crossed because you hadn't got those necessary checks in place. And we'd still got uncertainty around how the system was going to perform under load. So what did we do next? The next thing that we looked at was actually starting to automate some tests. Because what we're finding is, if actually it's taking us a month to get feedback that actually what we've done has actually broken something, it doesn't matter how good our automation is, unless we're actually able to cut that month's worth of testing down to a much smaller amount of time, we're not going to be able to release any quicker. So we focused on actually getting just a few automated tests in. And actually it makes a tremendous difference. Because as we were finding, unsurprisingly, the more new features we were adding, the more manual testing that we're needing to do. And actually it was just pushing the time between releases out further and further and further, the more features we put in, as there were more things that we had to test. And actually without any automated tests, we found it was just driving the wrong behaviours. We were scared to make changes, so we weren't making changes as often. We were saying, actually, no, it doesn't make sense just to do this one change and then put it through a couple of weeks of manual regression testing. Let's hold off. Let's put a few more features in there and then put it through the manual regression testing. And actually, by starting to put just a few automated tests in place, it stopped things getting worse. It didn't necessarily it didn't make things better immediately, but crucially, it stopped things getting worse. So we basically had no tests to speak of at all, and at that point, we couldn't put unit tests in safely. The code wasn't in a shape where we could actually start wrapping unit tests around it. So the thing where we started was we actually started putting acceptance tests around it. So we treated our system as a black box. We were poking it via its external interfaces. And the reason that we were doing that was that actually we wanted to ensure that the system was working for our customers. That was the critical thing. Once we knew that actually the system was working for our customers, it allowed us to then start to refactor underneath that and ensure that actually, yes, we can change the shape of this thing now. We can make it better, but actually, the system, as our customers are seeing, is still doing the right thing. One nice side effect, actually, about starting to put acceptance tests in was it actually ensured that we were building the right thing, because we were talking up front. We were talking about, okay, well, what are the acceptance criteria for when we've built this thing that we know it's doing the right thing. And actually, one of the other nice things was that some of the tooling that we started to put in place to allow us to do this black box testing actually formed the basis for load testing down the line. So once we'd got those few critical user journeys through the system, we were able to use that as an embryo that we could actually build our load testing on. So, and what we found really was that even just a small number of tests, just a handful of automated tests, really started to add real value. Because immediately we were using those automated tests to actually prove that our automated deployment was working. So we were getting that feedback very quickly that actually, yes, I've automatically deployed this thing, I've run a few tests across it, and I know that fundamentally most of the things are up and running. Critically, it gave us confidence to actually refactor. So having those acceptance tests in place, and we didn't have masses of acceptance tests to start with. We just had a few. As we were working on a new area, before we started touching that area, we would put a few acceptance tests around it first, and then we would dive in and start trying to make it better. And importantly, again, it was helping us focus on building the right thing. One of the things that Dave, our tech lead, would often say to me when I said, well, really, is all the tests that we're looking to put in place here, are they really all necessary? And what he would say to me was that, well, do you care about whether it's going to work in production? If you don't care about whether it's going to work in production, then don't build any tests for it. And if you're not going to build any if you don't care about it whether it's going to work in production, why are you even bothering to build it in the first place? So quite often, that discussion was really helpful, and quite often it sometimes would mean that actually there were some features that actually we wouldn't even put out, because, well, actually, no, this isn't really important at the moment. Let's focus on something else. So we're a tiny little way up this mountain now. It looks, the view's starting to get a little bit better. But so from here, we've now got the ability to, we can automate the deployment. We're starting to put some automated tests in. We're starting to get feedback, actually, that the thing that we're working on, actually, we're getting feedback maybe even within an hour, that the change that we've just made is actually working. And that's really starting to accelerate how we're able to change the system. But on the bad side, it's still scary to make changes in production. Even with those things in place, we're still not certain that when we're making the changes in production, that actually it's going to be okay. And we've still got an uncertainty about actually how's the system going to perform under load. So we've made some good steps forward, but actually there's still quite a long way to go. So what about load? What did we do there? The first thing that we focused on was actually improving the metrics. So for us, we had some information that we were putting into hosted graphite. So basic information about the infrastructure, memory usage, CPU usage, that sort of stuff. What we started to do was put some more application metrics into there as well, so that we could actually get a feel for actually how's our system performing. One of the critical things that we got from actually putting a bit more logging in, getting a few more metrics up on dashboards, was that it gave us a clue. Actually, we know that what we've got is not great, and we know that there's a lot we need to do. But where do we focus the effort? And actually, from having some metrics, being able to see that actually, okay, I can see that my MySQL memory usage is dropping down like this, and ultimately, in a few months, we can see we're going to hit a problem. But actually, that's not something that we need to concentrate on today. We can see we've got a little bit of time to do something about that. And the other thing that we found is that actually humans are very, very good at pattern matching. So just getting these metrics up, getting them actually up on the wall, allowed us to see very easily, every morning we'd see, okay, I can understand how the system's behaving. I can understand, actually, no, that doesn't look right. We really should start looking at that. One of the other things that we did quite early on was actually when we did a release, we would put something into Graphite to show a vertical bar to show actually this is the release point, and we could see that actually when if the metrics changed after that release point, that's showing us whether actually have we improved the situation or have we made things worse. So once we got some metrics in place, the next thing that we concentrated on was actually automating our load testing. So we'd got an Internet of Things platform, so we'd got an awful lot of devices that were sending us data all of the time. And one of the things that we needed to know was that actually we were going to be able to cope with this. As things scaled up, we were going to be able to cope with all of these things hitting us all the time, because they're not going to give up. Unlike people who get bored if your system's responding slowly, these devices don't. They just keep on hitting you. So what we did there was, first of all, to actually leverage cloud computing. So we actually we built a simulator for a device, and we run up thousands of those in EC2s, and we actually use that to hit our system. And again, some of this stuff wouldn't have been possible if we hadn't concentrated on automating the build, automating the deployment, actually getting some automated acceptance tests in place. some of these things would have been much, much harder. One of the things that we were looking at very early on was actually ensuring that in our automated load testing, we were using the same metrics in our load testing that we were using in production. So as our production load started to come up, we had a feel for actually the simulations that we've been doing, are they representative? And actually by ensuring that in load testing we're looking at the same metrics as we're looking at on a daily basis in production, it gave us some confidence that either yes, actually our simulations are working, or actually no, it's not quite right, we need to tweak something here. One thing particularly for us with load testing that was very important was monitoring the clients. Because actually when you're spinning up, so we had I think something like 3,000 simulators running inside one EC2, what we found early on was that actually the reason that the system was performing well under load was that actually the client had maxed out, and we weren't hitting it with nearly the sort of load that we thought we were, and so it was very important for us to actually monitor. Actually, is the client happy? Is it in fact putting in the sort of load that we're expecting? And also from a load testing point of view, it was not just monitoring steady state. It was monitoring actually how does the system behave when it's coming up from scratch? And for us, actually, that was the hardest thing, particularly with Internet of Things devices. The system comes up, they all start hitting you all at the same time. Actually, the steady state was easy in comparison with actually your system coming back up again and all the products connecting all at the same time. One of the other things that we found also, that once we'd started to get some automated load testing in place, it gave us the confidence to refactor other parts of the system that we just wouldn't have touched before because we didn't know what effect it was going to have on load. So how about upgrading? So we're now happy with load. We're happy that we're actually starting to get some automated tests in place, that when we change something, we're getting that feedback quickly. But actually, putting it into production is still scary at the moment. So the approach that we took there was we wanted cattle, not pets. We wanted actually to bring up a brand new environment on every release, so that what we were doing as part of our day-to-day work was exactly the same thing that we were going to be doing when we put it into production. And we were coming from a place where we had been doing upgrades and then having to manually patch it to get the production system back online. And actually, by bringing up a brand new environment on every release, it kept us honest, because any manual changes that we'd made were blown away the next time that we released. And so if we hadn't actually committed those into code, they'd gone. One of the other benefits that we found from that was that actually we got a disaster recovery test. Every time that we made a change, we were actually doing not a full disaster recovery test by any means, but actually we were doing a reasonable chunk of actually bringing a brand new system up, getting all of the data into it, and ensuring that we could do that every single time. And the nice thing was that we had done that process multiple times before we got to production. So what about state? That's always the hard bit. It was for us as well. So the approach that we took, I mean, we'd got quite a monolithic application, which was quite intertwined with the database, and so that meant that drove a particular direction for us, which was that we actually treated our database like our application, in that when we were doing a production upgrade, we would actually bring up a brand new production system online. We would actually replicate all of the production data into that. We would perform the upgrade on that duplicate of our system, test it, make sure it was all working. Once we were happy, then we would switch across to it. And the nice thing was, what we would do here is actually also as part of the pipeline, the approach we took was that actually when we were doing our releasing, let's say we'd done 2 weeks' work. So we'd done a sprint's worth of work, and actually at that point then, during the sprint's worth of work, we've been releasing to our CI environment continuously. So every couple of hours, we were bringing up a brand new environment in AWS, running our acceptance tests across it, and then we've got a good feel for actually, yeah, this thing's working. Thank you. But what that wasn't what wasn't helping us with was actually the upgrade part. So yes, we've been able to bring a brand new system up from scratch and run some tests against it, but actually our production system isn't a brand new system. It's got an awful lot of state there. So what we were finding was that as we started to do that very last check of, well, actually, can I do an upgrade? Can I do an upgrade on a sanitized copy of the production data? And it didn't work. That feedback, we were getting that feedback very late. We were getting that 2 weeks maybe after we'd actually caused the problem. So what we then started to do was actually do a database effectively we create a sanitized copy of our production data and then do an upgrade test on that every single night. So that every single night we knew that we could take what we'd got and actually upgrade production with that, and it was going to work. And this meant that actually we weren't testing, we were no longer testing for the first time in production. So we're a little bit higher up this mountain now, but the rainbow is still moving away from us. So we can, so good teams at this point, we know that good teams can make changes to a single service without having to bring the whole monolith with them. And that's not where we are yet. So when we're making a change, we're still having to worry about actually every part of the system because we're deploying it as one thing. But actually, we need to actually also have a look at the view as well in order to try and stay sane. And this thing is there's always something that you can do better. But actually, it's worth having a look at. Okay, well, actually, where have we got to now? And for me, this was the point where I really felt like, yeah, I know what, we're actually starting to really turn the corner now. Because we've got the ability now to automatically bring up a copy of our production environment, automatically upgrade it, check it's working, and then switch across to it. And we actually use that mechanism to migrate from a Red Hat instance running in Rackspace through to a CentOS instance running in AWS. We did that whole switch across, we checked it was working, we switched across to it, all of the metrics that we were monitoring gave us a good degree of confidence that actually, yes, everything's all good. And then within an hour, literally, of doing that migration and switching it wasn't just users, it was all our Internet of Things devices as well, were all passing across now to this new system. Within an hour of doing that, I was actually able to take the team out for lunch. Because we actually had the confidence that it's working. We know it's working. We've done this multiple times before, and from our metrics, we're happy. And at that point, the late night kebab seemed a long way away, which was very pleasant. So one of the other things that we had to do was actually balance improving with delivery, because we were a startup. We had to keep delivering features at the same time we were improving what we had to work with. So one of the things that we were doing there was looking at what's the most painful for the business, and how can we talk about a new feature alongside a problem that a customer's had when we've done an upgrade and we haven't picked it up beforehand. So in order to do that, it was very important to us to work from a single backlog. So all our continuous improvement work that we had to do was in the backlog. All of the features are in the backlog, all the bugs are in the backlog, and we were working through with the business and prioritizing which of these things actually is more important to you. Is it this new feature, or is it the ability for us to be able to guarantee that we can support this amount of load that we're expecting in 2 months' time? And actually, so that was all within the backlog, and so we didn't have a team just doing features and a team just doing continuous improvement. The whole thing went in and we focused on what was the most important thing for the business. We were also quite often using features as vehicle to improve. So if there's a new feature the business wanted, we would use that as a way to actually start to improve the shape of something that we'd got. And it took a little bit longer to deliver, but ultimately, the next time we wanted to change that thing, it was much faster. When you were starting where we were, there was a temptation, I guess, to. I've got to speed up. To actually, you know what? I'm really scared to change this thing. So actually, what I'm going to do is do this new feature development on a feature branch. I mean, had we done that though, then we would have been very, very concerned about refactoring whilst we'd got this new feature off in the feature branch, because we're not going to be able to bring those two together again. So it was very important to us to avoid doing that. Also, you have to keep paying off the technical debt. So where we got to in the end, I mean, 18 months in, I had an arrangement with the team that I would guarantee 20% of the capacity for that team to work on improvement. And it was up to the team to choose what area was it that they saw was causing the most pain. And also, when things are bad, you've got to be relentless. Anytime you're in an area, you've got to be making it better. You've really got to keep pushing very, very hard. In terms of where did we get to? After 18 months, we were delivering 2 to 3 times a week, stress-free. We were changing the way the business worked. We had the ability to get features out so quickly that actually we wouldn't have a long discussion about what was important. We would actually cut that down and say, well, let's just put a bit of that out. Let's just make a small change, put that out, and let's see. We had a happy team that was willing to touch any part of the system. And I think that really gave me a lot of confidence. If every part of the system the team was happy to touch, that gave me confidence that actually that our test coverage was good also. And we were starting to strangle our existing application. There's some other bits which I'm going to skip through. One thing to say, I started to read this book literally about a month ago, and it seems to be a book that basically just describes what we did. So if you're interested to know how to approach the sort of problems that we had, this is absolutely brilliant source of information. I would have made our journey easier, I think, if we had that at the time. Thank you very much.
Question time, isn't it?
Good.
Cool. 8 minutes.
Okay, cheers.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah. There's a microphone, so could you wait for it? It's for the video. Okay.
You answered all the questions.
Ready?
What slides do we miss?
Yeah, we've got some time. I'll go back to the ones that we skipped past. So other things we learned along the way. One of the things was that actually, I don't know why, but it seems that quite often the easiest solution to a problem is quite often the wrong solution. And we had to try very, very hard to look at, okay, what's actually going to make things better? Because if we go downhill at this point, ultimately we're going to end up in a ditch. We're going to be at the bottom of a valley, and we're going to have to climb back out again. And so actually in doing that, having somebody who has ideally done it before, who has been through some of these challenges and can point you in the right direction is tremendously useful. Because certainly I found that my default was to look at. Actually, my default is I think we should go this way, but actually it was quite often the wrong way. It was the easiest way, but actually it was the wrong way. And also having somebody else that's also really pushing to try and improve things. Just having somebody, I mean, it's almost like counselling. Just somebody else that you can talk to and say, we know this is really bad. How can we improve it? And just having somebody else there is tremendously helpful. So if you're looking to embark on a journey, I would certainly try and find somebody who's equally passionate, or ideally even been on a similar journey before, that you can talk to. And other things, when we started, actually we had a lot of curved desks, which turns out were appalling from a point of view of collaboration. And that actually reasonably early on, it was quite hard convincing people that actually our nice, expensive curved desks were not the right thing. But we did, and we got rid of all of those, and it made the collaboration so much easier. When you've got a curved desk, it seems to prevent people from sitting down next to each other and talking about something. And the second that we had straight desks, that collaboration got much better. Retrospectives also. I was really surprised by this. Quite often, the sort of problems that I thought the team had were quite often very different to the problems that the team actually had. And so having retrospectives where you're talking about the process and you're letting the team talk about the problems that they see, mean that actually you do tend to hit the pain points that's actually slowing the team down more than if you hadn't been doing those. Because quite often I would look at the way we're working and have an idea about what needed to improve, and then in the retrospective where the whole team was talking about it, we quite often come up with much different things than I'd thought, and things that ultimately had a much bigger impact.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Cool.